Hello, and welcome to the Community Development and Urban Planning Committee meeting. I am Councilmember Maria Cabrera, Councilmember at Large. Welcome to this evening's meeting. We just want to remind you that if you wanted to make any comments on any of the legislation or resolutions that we're presenting today, please sign up in the Zoom link, and we will get to you after the council members ask their questions. At this time, I would like to have a roll call and have the members of the committee introduce themselves, and then any other council members that might be present via virtually or here in person. Start to my left with a lady.
Councilman McCoy, 6th District.
Councilmember Vincent M. White, 1st District.
Members that are on virtually, if you could introduce yourself.
Councilmember
Field.
Sinead Darby. Oh, sorry. Councilmember
Nathan Field,
Sinead
8th
Darby,
District.
2nd District.
Okay, let's start with Darby.
We do it alphabetical.
Councilmember Sinead Darby, 2nd District.
Councilman
Nathan Field, 8th District.
Councilwoman Fields, 5th District.
Wonderful. And Councilmember Spadola is at a conference, so he is excused from this evening's meeting. We're going to start with the first agenda item, which is a resolution authorizing the mayor to file the city fiscal year 2024 annual action plan budget with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, including funding for the Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Investment Partnership Program, the Emergency Solutions Grants Program, and the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS. And I believe we have Director Robert Weir here to speak to this. If you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the City Council and the public that is watching. This resolution authorizing the mayor to file our annual plan with our federal budget. It's actually our 49th year that we've been receiving these funds, and these funds would be used from July 1st, 23 to June 30, 24. I just would like to make a short presentation on the process, and then if there's any questions, we can go from there. We started in January, where we advertised the availability of funds, and we also emailed all our previous grantees. We had a public information meeting on the 19th of January, and we had the applications that were due on February 10th. Now, the applications were reviewed by a review panel invited from City Council, the Mayor's Office, the Administration, Newcastle County, and the Continuum of Care. We put together a draft budget on a score basis. That information is available if anyone would like to review that. We had a public comment period from March 27th to April 27th on that draft budget. On April 20th, we had a second public hearing that went through on a line-by-line basis of the draft budget, which is tonight part of the resolution that's being presented to this committee, with the anticipation that full council would see this and on the 18th. When we talk about the next step of that, it would be a submission to HUD. HUD would accept our plan, and the annual plan is based on our 5-year plan, which is 20 to 2024.
Excuse me, Councilmember Darby, can you mute your mic, please? Thank you.
We received 21 submissions for CDBG in public service, 3 for CDBG in facility, 6 in the Emergency Solutions Grant, 2 for HOPWA, that's housing for people with AIDS, and we had 4 applications for home, 1 that was not funded, and there was 1 ESG application that was not located in the city. So we were very lucky this year to match up pretty well with the requests versus the budget itself. The budget is attached to the resolution, and it outlines all the agencies that we are recommending that are funded out of these entitlement funds for this coming year.
Are there any questions from my colleagues?
No question, just a comment. I participated in the review panel and as well as council staff. It was a very thorough, transparent process. I think we went 2 rounds just to drill down to the most application that would give us the biggest bang and biggest buck for this effort. I commend Director Weir and his staff for coordinating that effort and to making certain the council was fully aware and briefed on all applications and budgetary requirements. So thank you, Mr. Weir.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilman White. Anyone online, any of the council members online that might have any questions? Okay, not hearing any. This is a resolution, does not have to be voted out of committee, and this will be voted on May 18th, in the next council meeting. And Director Weir, you can proceed to the second item, which is a resolution authorizing the mayor to file a substantial amendment to the city fiscal year 2020 annual action plan budget with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to outline the proposed use of CDBG-CB HOPWA, HOPWA-CB, and ESG-CB funds to respond to the ongoing COVID-19 crises.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This resolution to authorize the mayor to file an amendment to the fiscal year 2020 really reflects additional funds that we were awarded through our entitlement for COVID funds. As we all know, that COVID changed the world forever, and there was a lot of these agencies that we had awarded funds to that either could not use them, did not use them, and we ended up with monies that were not spent. So the requirement that HUD puts on the city is that we need to spend in a timely fashion. So this amendment is part of a process that we have to advertise it publicly. We have to have public hearings, much like today, and we're talking about the dollar figures that would basically go to these agencies anyway, but we have to reallocate them. When we talk about the CDBG, there's a lot of homelessness prevention, a lot of services that are being supported by this. Again, the budget is attached to the resolution. When we talk about the ESG-CV, that's also shelter operations, homeless prevention services, and the HOPWA is the exact same, except it's certified with people with AIDS are the service targets. What we are trying to do here is we are trying to put as much money out into the street to the folks that need it the most. So this is just an amendment to a previous budget that had been passed, so that we can report to not only the community but to HUD as far as what we're doing with those funds.
Great, thank you. I'm going to start with, when you have your homeless prevention, so is that to help individuals find housing before they get to the point that they're homeless? When you have the prevention funds versus money that goes into someone who has a shelter, as an example?
Well, we do have rapid rehousing funds that are in our 2024 budget, but when we talk about homeless prevention, that can be anything from subsidy payments for utilities, for rent, case management for the individual or family that is at risk. A lot of these agencies are very creative in using these dollars to prevent someone from becoming homeless. And then on the shelter side, those shelter operations, that's for folks that do fall into homelessness, and we're trying to do the best we can to support those folks, but they are temporary. That is not a permanent housing solution.
Okay. My second question is, with the situation that we had, the 800 block of Adams Street, that a lot of those people were displaced, did we use funds from this particular grant? Because I understand that we were reimbursing the Hope Center for the people that were staying there.
The Hope Center was integral in helping house folks for us. We did use ESG-CV in that effort, and the mayor's office also made contributions from the general fund to the Hope Center for that.
Okay, and my last question is, with the recent notification that Ministry of Caring lost funding to 3 of their programs, one of them is for people with AIDS, Mary House of Hope for women with children, and I think there's another one. Will these funds be allocated to help them in any way, or is there other funding that we're trying to help them? I know there was a request out there and certain questions that were being asked. How do we fill the void of an organization that's been helping our community and our city with having had those funds reallocated to Southern Delaware?
Well, the Ministry of Caring provides a tremendous amount of service to the city of Wilmington, and when we look at this particular amendment, that there is $66,000 in there for the House of Joseph. There is also admin money and support money for the Ministry of Caring in our 2024 budget. We can't, with our limitations, we can't make them whole because the cuts were pretty severe. But we certainly have upped our support as best we could with the funds that we have.
Thank you, Director Weir. That's all from me. And Councilmember McCoy, you may proceed.
Thank you. Director Weir, I was reading this and I just wanted to make certain that I had clarity on it. The funds that are here that we're looking at, it came from CARES and ARPS, and is this a redistribution? Like, are you reallocating funds, or, you know, in order to make certain that we spent down everything? Like, I just wanted to make certain I was clear on what this is.
It's both, in as much that there were agencies that, say for instance, they didn't have any staff at all, so that their services were not offered. We had lots of folks, say for instance, that maybe under contract said they were going to serve 40 people, and because of the circumstances, they only served 1 or 2. So some of that money came back because we did a review of the contract, the scope of work, and it didn't match up with the payments. No, I'm sorry, not the payments, the contract. We were paying them based on their submissions. So some of that is reallocated from folks that couldn't use it. And then we also had some money that was from previous years that we put into the pot too. You know, when we look at it, this amendment and the dollars that we haven't spent previously, this year will be a good year for funding for our nonprofits and our service providers, given that we have some extra money.
Okay, may I follow?
Yes, you may.
All right, so with that being stated, are we looking at the same organizations, and you are reallocating these funds for perhaps different types of services?
It can be that, yes. I would have to do a little deeper dive to be able to give you the names and the changes. But absolutely, as far as these agencies were not prohibited because they didn't spend the money. It was just that we need to have this money spent, and if you don't have the services it's going out the door, we want to work with you, but if you can't provide us with a eligible activity, then we have to reallocate it.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Councilman White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to first of all commend Real Estate and Housing for a job well done of monitoring the expenditures to make sure that we capture any dollars that might have been null and void through their not application. But I also want to say that as Director Weir knows, there is a re-emphasis on the part of HUD, Housing, Urban and Development, that rapid rehousing is the best model to leverage these dollars. And it's not just a Delaware issue. This is seen on a nationwide basis. And I think it's very important that agencies or entities understand that HUD is serious about that request, as well as I think the community should be. So I, again, commend the city, Mr. Weir, on the community block grant partnership, homeowners partnership. And I also want to say that for a small department and a city with a lot of needs, the department is doing a very outstanding job on monitoring these funds, including housing opportunities for persons with AIDS. So kudos to you, Mr. Weir, and to the administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely, as far as the staff, this year has been a very tough year for real estate and housing because we've had a number of retirements. We had folks that left for other positions. We were down to about 4 people there for a while. So absolutely the staff, Shamika Ponzo, Tom Ford, Carol Watson, Just, the city is so lucky to have them working for them, and I'm very lucky to have them working for me.
And we're lucky to have you working also. So don't plan on retiring.
Yes,
Thank you.
I can't.
I agree with Councilman White. I saw one of our former employees. I was surprised that he was now with the county and not with you, but you do have a phenomenal staff, and I thank you for all the work that you're doing. And we had such a successful NARO conference right here in Wilmington where we hosted it. So it was great to see the examples that our Real Estate and Housing Department gave, as well as our Housing Authority and State Housing Authority, to people that were visiting from across the nation. Are there any questions from the council members that are here virtually? Okay, no one? All right then, so are there any questions from anyone who's joining us from the public that would like to make a comment or ask a question? Yes, no? Let me know.
Silence.
Yeah, I can't see them. Okay, all right, well, not hearing any, then this is a resolution that will also be voted on in the May 18th council meeting, and thank you so much for joining us this evening to share
Madam Chair.
at least this good news for our nonprofits that are out here helping our city residents with housing issues.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The next item on the agenda is a resolution in support of SS1 for SB number 1, an act to amend Title 25 of the Delaware Code relating to the Residential Landlord Tenant Code. This is sponsored by Councilmember Darby. Councilmember Darby, you may proceed to speak on your resolution.
Yes, thank you. I am bringing this up on my phone here. So this legislation is related to the landlord tenant code in regards to rights for representation for tenants when they're going through eviction. So currently, about 18,000 evictions cases were filed each year in the state of Delaware, which only had about 101 rental households. And evictions create significant costs for the state, for local government, related to shelter funding, education funding, healthcare provided in hospitals. So there's a lot of cost that goes into the state providing services to families who are evicted. So we believe this piece of legislation will help to keep more people in their homes. It shows that other states that allows rights to representation, mediation, and those other court processes and guidance for tenants. It also allows for more people to stay in their home. So I am in support of this legislation. I know in Wilmington, we're hit with a lot of evictions, COVID. We saw an increase. There's a lot of homeless population here, and I just believe in the importance of people being housed. So that's why I'm in support of this legislation. And we can open it up for any questions or.
Are there any questions?
Oh, yeah, and the sponsor is
Okay.
Senator Townsend, Brian Townsend. So I want to thank him for the work that he's been doing on this, because this is like not the first year we've been having this conversation as like a community organizer or advocate. It's been about 3-4 years talking about this legislation and this bill and trying to get it passed.
Great, thank you. Any of the council members here present would like to start with questions?
I may, Madam
Councilman
Chair.
White, proceed.
Thank you. First of all, Councilmember Darby, I commend you for this piece of legislation. You are absolutely correct. This conversation has been going on for the past, I believe, 5 years. It seems
Please
to...
have savings in the bank.
Yes.
When you go to buy a home. I mean, home ownership, it's expensive.
Hello?
I'm not sure.
Not me.
That wasn't me either. I'm in a quiet
Oh,
place.
no.
Okay, so let me just continue. Your whereas and your documentations are on point. Since March of 2022, there's been 28,000 evictions in Delaware. We rank consistently on a per capita basis as one of the highest in the nation. This piece of legislation that Councilmember Darby offers gives protections in terms of having a tenant have legal counsel. It surely is a change from the landlord having legal counsel. I don't know who would be opposed to having counsel provided for a tenant. I just don't understand that. Nobody would want to go in court without counsel if it was at all possible. So I'd like to say, one, kudos on this, Council Member Darby. I surely support it, and I'd like to be a sponsor, co-sponsor of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. She already answered my question because I wanted to find out who was actually sponsoring this downstate, and I too would like to be added as a co-sponsor to this. Thank you.
I have a quick question, because I'm reading here about the rights of homeless persons to use and move freely in public spaces, including public transportation, public works, public parks, and public buildings without discrimination, which, of course, if we're all allowed to be in those parks, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to be there. Are there any limitations
I think you might be
that
right.
would happen? I mean, I guess, like, if you're at a public park, you have to adhere to the hours that the park is open. Like we.
Madam Chair, I
Madam
believe
Chair,
Yeah, I
that's the
think
next
we're on
one.
the
you're,
wrong
you're,
legislation.
you're on the next
You're on the next
resolution.
one.
Oh,
It's HB, Madam
Yeah.
Chair, it's HB 55 that mentions that.
no, I'm sorry. I thought I
worries.
had them in order here. Oh, okay.
No,
No
you're
wor-
fine.
Okay, no worries. I'll wait for the next one. Is there anybody online that has a question? Any of the council members? Anyone? Anita?
No one have a hand up.
Okay, how about anyone from the public? Just raise your hand if anybody wants to speak.
Helen, there's a Helen Furman.
Okay, Ms. Helen Furman, you may proceed on the resolution that we're speaking on right now.
Right. I would like to know the language of that. I'm a landlord.
All the details for today's meetings, including the details of the legislation and each thing, is online. We do have copies here, but it's also available on the city council site where it announces today's meeting. So if you want to take a peek at it and maybe circle back with a question, we're happy to entertain it.
Well, I think that maybe it should have more discussion because I just get the impression that it's anti-landlord.
Do you have any further comments?
Well, I will say that it's fine if anybody getting evicted is provided counsel, but I think that you should provide the same for the landlord. If you're gonna pony up the money to defend a tenant who doesn't pay the rent and keep them in the property, you need to make the landlord whole, fix all the damages, and provide a lawyer for the landlord.
Okay, any other further comments?
That's it for now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so not seeing any other hands or anyone else from the public, we're going to move on, since that is a resolution. That will be
Really quick,
voted on-
Councilmember Cabrera.
Yes, yes.
Can I
you
say
may
two
speak.
things
Mhm.
before we end? I just want to say that I am not anti-landlord. I actually partnered with the National League of Cities to work with ways that we can engage landlords. I know Councilmember Cabrera is in support of it, and other people on council came to the landlord town hall to really listen to landlords. So we are not anti-landlord. I'm not even like pro-renter or pro-landlord. I'm just like for doing the right thing. And also, most landlords are represented when they go to court. So that's the problem. Less than 1% of renters were going to court being represented, and like over like 90% of landlords have some sort of representation. So it was just the balance and the disparity there is what they're trying to fix. But I know there are some concerns from landlords. There's the landlord what is it, the Greater Association of Landlords with Jeff Sheraton and Renee Spurl in them. They have been working with the sponsor and advocating for ways to for landlords and especially for small landlords to not be neglected or be negatively impacted by this legislation. So I know conversations are happening back and forth, and I'm willing to support good policy that helps to protect small landlords to make sure they're not directly impacted. But I am all the way for right to representation when there's already an imbalance in who's represented, when there's over 90% of landlords and less than 1% of renters who go represented at court. So that's what we're trying to fix. But I just want to say I am not anti-landlord. But thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Darby. And being that that is a resolution, we do not need to vote on that, and that will be heard at the, do we have? Okay, Ms. Berman, you can proceed with your comments.
I'm just saying, Councilwoman Darby, that landlords have to go out and spend a lot of money to take back their property. And I've seen cases where there are great tenants, great relationships, and I've had really good luck. There have been one or two, and I've been a witness as well for another landlord, where the landlord was manipulated. There was no reason these folks should stay in the home when there were plenty of apartments that would even accept people with eviction notices. Plenty of apartments are available out there, but they may not be as nice. They may be smaller, but that's too bad. If they're in a property that they cannot afford and they lied about their income on the application, you're going to come along with a lawyer, force me to get a lawyer, and do everything you can to keep that tenant in my property when they can't afford it. So I'm just saying, give me the money for legal representation. Stop making me pay for my legal representation. The courts, and I'm sure you're on the side of this, are skewed against landlords very heavily. They want to keep everybody in your property that you built and fussed about and spent money on. And you take in a family that cheerfully lies to you, runs up the water bill. You try to put them out, you can't, and the court is not sympathetic. And when a landlord files an action, how long does it take before the landlord is heard in court? And all that time, the landlord is going without rent? No, Shanae, I'm sorry, but the whole court system is skewed against the landlord. So if you're going to provide representation to the family, which is great, provide the same for the landlord. And you're not. That bill does not.
Thank you, Ms. Berman.
Thank you.
All right, and then Councilmember Darby is sponsoring a resolution in support of that bill, which is Senator Brian Townsend, who is proposing the bill in Dover, and certainly you could let your concerns be known to him as well. So we are going to proceed to the next item, which is a resolution in support of HB number 55, an act to amend Title VI and Title 31 of the Delaware Code relating to individuals who are homeless, and the sponsor is Councilmember Darby. You may proceed to speak on your legislation.
Yeah, so I am in support of this legislation that's on the state level. It's an act of a Bill of Rights for individuals experiencing homelessness. And this is really a legislation, I think, that we start with the foundation of how do we treat homeless people. And then I think we can start getting to some other legislations. But this makes sure that by law, you could not that it's a right for people to be housed, right? Regardless of housing status, people should be treated equally, have equal opportunity to live in decent, safe, and sanitary and healthful accommodations, and enjoy quality of opportunities. So this just sets forth the rights of individuals experiencing homelessness, and it creates a process where someone can put in a complaint if they're discriminated against for being homeless. So it sets up the state with the State Human and Civil Rights Commission and the Division of Human Resources, where they can now do investigations if you feel like you're being discriminated against for your housing status. And that's all. And oh yeah, the sponsor is State Representative Lynn.
Thank you. Do I have any questions from the members of the committee? Okay, I'm going to proceed with my question that I originally had, and my apologies.
Yeah.
I had the 2 copies of the same legislation is what happened. So would that follow the rules that are already in place? For example, you know, that we have after dusk, people need to leave the public parks. So would this keep them open, allow people to be there, or would we still say that they just don't get discriminated or treated differently than anybody else? And just like, you know, we're not allowed to be in the parks after dark, then the same thing would apply to them.
Yeah, when I was reading the legislation, I didn't see any exceptions for homeless people to violate any like current law. So I think it's like if everyone has to leave the park, then everybody has to leave the park, right? So I think it's more just if someone feels discriminated because, you know, it's 2 p.m. and they're laying in the park on a bench, I guess, or sitting in the park and they feel like it's because of their homeless status that they're being asked to leave. So no, they still have to follow rules.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of behavior and everything like that.
Yes.
I don't have any other questions. Anybody that is online that might have a question? Any of the council members?
We have a second attendee, but no hand up.
Okay, anyone from the public that would like to make a comment or have a question? Yes?
Yeah.
No. Nope, okay. Well, with that said, this resolution will also go to the June council meeting, and we will vote on that at that time. So the next item on the agenda is an ordinance to amend Chapter 34 of the City Code to allow residential tenants in city properties to deposit withheld rent in a city-held escrow account. The sponsor is Councilmember McCoy. You may proceed to discuss your legislation.
Okay. All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So this ordinance is basically something that we've already had in the muni codes. What it is that this is the rent withholding ordinance that everyone's actually spoken about previously.
Okay.
Unfortunately, at the time, for some time, we've actually had it where you had to deal with the municipal court, and that is something that we no longer have here within the city of Wilmington. So with little tweaks like that had to be made in order to make certain that this is something that can take place now. I've been looking over this thing for pretty much a year now. We're actually coming up on a year since the unfortunate thing happened on Adams Street. It'll be like a year, like within the next few days. So I wanted to make certain that we did at least one thing since that has taken place, and that is if anyone is actually paying rent and their landlord they've made a request to their landlord to fix something, and that was vital to their quality of life in that apartment, and they had not, they would be able to use this rent withholding to hold them accountable to fix that, whatever that is. And so by this this ordinance is amended to make certain that it is for today now. It took out the municipal court portion. We did make certain that there is an affidavit that goes with it so that L&I can be involved. And there is an escrow account that is being held, well, not held, but the treasurer's office is actually responsible for maintaining that account. So we just wanted to make certain that there was another tool for our renters here within the city of Wilmington. And that's primarily it.
Are there any questions from the council members?
Madam Chair, may I ask a question of the
Yes.
sponsor?
Please
Sponsor, your bill, your ordinance mentions that the Department of License and Inspection shall develop an affidavit consistent with this section, correct?
Yes.
Is that affidavit going to be in any other language other than English?
And no, at this moment, we did not place it in another language other than English. Our lawyers for the council actually put together this affidavit. We have given that information on to L&I to make certain that they were comfortable with that information, and we can perhaps get it translated into other languages. I believe predominantly it's Spanish, and then I think it's like Creole or something that they normally translate our information into. But we can do that once we are all in agreement on what the affidavit states and how L&I will use it.
Madam Chair, may I have a follow-up?
Yes, you may.
To the sponsor, I hear you, but I believe that the bill should address that specifically in this section. I understand that you may not, but lack of doing so can create a basis for fair housing violation, and I'd like for the sponsor and law department to consider the consequences of that. No further questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to ask a question. So I understand that we've had this program, was it statewide or just citywide, and we just weren't using it or enforcing it? Is this any different than, does the state even have a program, or was it just us? I guess
So,
more
yeah.
background on that.
Okay, so this ordinance is actually the city's ordinance. We, if there was a program in existence, this ordinance addressed that. Unfortunately, this ordinance was not really being used. So when everyone talked about there is rent withholding, we do have escrow, it existed, but there was no process to it. So that is what has been going on for these past few months, trying to establish a process and make certain that anything that was obsolete, that we no longer had, that we had to figure out how to go around, to still use it without having to go through the municipal court, which the city no longer has.
Okay, so basically what you did is you made some adjustments to the legislation, revamp it so that it could be in more current, it would really work with what we have here currently. So perhaps maybe since we are revamping it, we could add the verbiage to make sure that this information is just available in multiple languages, or that people have access to a language line or something, because it does make sense for people to be aware that they have these rights.
Yes, I actually believe that that would be fine. We can, I can talk to the attorneys, the law department, and make certain that we find where we can add that information to make certain, to be certain that we have this in more than one language.
Yeah, and accessibility is important, but thank you for bringing this up, because this is something that we did discuss, that people continue to pay rent when the landlords have not fixed the properties, and they've been sitting, I mean, not going to point anybody out, but there's someone that works in this building who, gave a complaint that the ceiling fell in, and that was in August, and we're looking that it was March, and the ceiling still had not been fixed. It was still caved in, there was mold, and the children had to relocate to another room because they had mold in the room, but yet the person continues to pay their rent, and the repairs were not made. Luckily, our inspectors got in there and are taking care of that issue, but I think that if landlords or companies, because sometimes it's companies, not individuals, the individuals tend to kind of step it up a little bit, that there should be protections for our tenants the same way that the landlords have protections. It's a, two-way street. Councilman White, you had?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for recognizing me. With the permission of the sponsor, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor of this legislation. Thank you.
I too would like to be added. Are there any council members online that would like to make any comments or ask any questions?
Councilmember Darby.
Yeah, Councilwoman Darby.
You may proceed, Councilmember Darby.
Yes, thank you. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor. This is a long time coming. Thank you, Councilmember McCoy, for taking this on. We need this to be in place. This can be a game changer for the city in regards to a lot of the issues that we're having. But what makes it, and I wish I had the code in front of me right now, and I don't think it was altered or any language was stricken out in regards to what can happen next, is that the city, currently before this amendment, if you put your money in escrow, after a certain period of time, if the landlord doesn't fix it, the city can either do it or contract it out for someone to do that repair. So I hope that wasn't taken out, but when I did read it, because I've been waiting for it to be uploaded to the website and it wasn't uploaded, and I've been waiting. So by the time it got uploaded, I didn't get a real chance to dive into it, which I think is another issue or problem, to be prepared for meetings. But I just believe that I hope that part wasn't taken out, where the city can also use its power to either fix it or contract out someone to do the work that the landlord won't do. So that's the only comment I have, and I'm happy to be a co-sponsor. Shout out to the community and community organizations who have been pushing and advocating for this to be what it is today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Darby. Are there any other
Right.
council members who would like to speak to this? Is there anyone from the public who has their hand raised to speak to this?
Helen does again.
Ms. Helen Furman, you may proceed.
I apologize that I didn't get to pay attention to all of that. I've had something else come up. But I just want to say that it sounds very good to have an escrow place. But a recent situation came up where this didn't happen to me. It happened to a friend of mine who is a very responsible landlord with very nice properties. And his tenant made a long list of things that needed repaired in the house. The Department of L&I simply went in and took the tenant's word for it. And there were 34 citations on the list. Nowhere near that amount was accurate. There were a few things that needed to be tended to. They kind of trumped up a bunch of accusations, and the inspector came out and didn't do the due diligence to see if any of these items really required repair, which they did not. And then the landlord asked my husband, who's a property manager, to go on over to the house and have our man start the repairs. Well, the tenant, because she was manipulating the landlord so badly, would not allow the repair people access to the property, and cried and made up stories. The landlord, of course, had to get a lawyer. But what I'm hearing here is, oh, you can't put these people out, and you're a bad landlord. You didn't make repairs. You see how things get skewed? They haven't paid the rent to that landlord for 2 months, crying the need for repairs, but then they didn't allow access to the property to make these fictitious repairs. So what I'm hearing tonight is very heavy duty, hate the landlord and keep people in the landlord's house and take over his property, steal it. That's what I'm hearing, and I'm shocked. And yes, I think you need to hear that, Shanae. If people can't afford where they're living, then Shanae, you go and help them find another domicile. Plenty are listed and available. Move them. You don't have to keep
Ms. Furman,
um,
you have 4 seconds left, but first.
Okay, but I do not believe or support keeping people in a home that they cannot afford.
Thank you for your
It just
comments.
creates attrition.
Thank you for your comments, and for future comments, you do not address the council member, you just make your comments, and that would be Councilmember Darby when we're in this professional setting, not Shanae. Thank you very much.
Actually,
proceed.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make certain that the Ms. Helen Furman, that she was aware that this ordinance is through Councilman McCoy. It is not through Councilman Darby. And wanted to make you aware that the reason why we needed the affidavit through L&I is because we do not want it to be frivolous things that people are using to basically withhold their rent. we're talking about quality of life issues, and that's the reason why L&I and an affidavit is required. If there's anything, and we do make certain that there's a reasonable amount of time, in order to get it repaired. But if there's any conditions like the lack of heat, water, electricity, or things of that nature which are materially deprives a tenant of a substantial part of benefit of the tenant's bargain, you need to be out there right away to take care of those things. Those definitely are dangerous and they affect the quality of life. And so we wanted to make certain that we help our tenants here within the city of Wilmington and give them another tool if they have basically an absentee landlord, someone who is actually not really listening to them when they tell them that there's an issue going on with their residents. So that is basically what this is. It's nothing more than just to try to hold someone accountable, because another thing is this, in order to do the rent withholding, you have to be, you cannot be behind in your rent. So please do realize that we're not trying to make it where as though people are just getting over on our landlords, but at the same time, we have to make certain that there's an even playing field, that our landlords are being responsible and accountable for the residents that they're renting out, these units that they're renting to the tenants. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor McCoy. And I will just add that our inspectors have to follow the NACA rules, which are now the National Housing Code, so they can't just go out there and give out, fines or write people up for frivolous things. They have to follow the code of the law, and whatever may have happened in the past, I'm not sure, but I know that moving forward, how our L&I department has to function, and that is by following the rules which protect both the landlord as well as the tenant. Okay, so with that said, this ordinance, because it is an ordinance, does need to be voted on. So can I get a motion to have ordinance to amend Chapter 34 of the City Code to allow residential tenants and city properties to deposit withheld rent in a city-held escrow? If I can get a motion?
Councilman White, motion made.
Can I get a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and second. All in favor, respond with aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so the ordinance will be voted, has been voted out of committee and will be held for a full vote of council in the June meeting. So we have one last item on the agenda, and my apologies for not bringing this up earlier in the meeting in case anybody was present for it. And that is an ordinance to amend Chapter 5 of the City Code to extend Sunday hours of operation for non-conforming liquor stores. The sponsor is Councilman Nathan Field, and that legislation will be held for a future committee meeting. Not seeing any other items on the agenda, can I please get a motion to, I want to thank everyone, first of all, for joining us today for this Community Development and Urban Planning meeting. And I would like to get a motion, just Councilman Field. Oh, Councilman Field, did you want to say anything? Okay, well, may I get a motion to adjourn this meeting? And we will see you at the next council meeting, which is on the first Thursday of the month and the third Thursday of the month, and that would be next Thursday here at City Council Chambers. You can join us virtually, but we certainly love to see you in person, and the meetings do start at 6:30 p.m. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion made to adjourn.
Second.
It has been properly moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you so much for joining us this evening.